Hello and welcome to Air Intelligence, brought to you by Field Controls. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney, and today we're talking about indoor air quality, and I have a great guest to bring on for the conversation at hand. Francis Dietz is Vice President, Public Affairs, Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. Francis, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a good conversation because it affects all of us, air quality. So we're going to really kind of lay some foundational information out there, and you're going to talk a little more deeply about some things that we need to know about air quality. Before we do that, though, can I ask you to give us a brief bio if you can?
Sure. I've been involved in this industry in AHRI particularly for more than 18 years now. So this is the type of issue that, has always sort of been percolating under the surface, but has, recently gained more prominence, mostly because of the pandemic. But my background is, 18 years here. I also worked at the Department of Energy, some time on Capitol Hill, and then some time in the Reagan administration for those who are, particularly old, like I am.
And we talked off camera that I just celebrated a big birthday. So we're both in the category. So I definitely can appreciate that. And clearly, you know the topic that we are covering today. So excited to jump into this conversation. So let's start off with this, Francis. Can you start off by telling us more about what AHRI does?
Yes, AHRI is the trade association for manufacturers. So manufacturers of heating, air conditioning, commercial refrigeration, and water heating equipment. Basically, your average viewer has probably at least three items that our members manufacture in their home. We also develop standards and guidelines that are global in nature. We also have performance certification programs, basically that test equipment to make sure that they meet the claims of manufacturers. So we have about 330 member companies, all of which must have manufacturing in North America.
So we talked about at the beginning, I mentioned how, air quality affects all of us, but as you referenced, especially since the pandemic, we've all kind of been more in tune of just how important it is. So can you provide an overview of just how important indoor air quality is, and then its impact on the health and well-being of individuals in both residential and then, of course, workplace settings as well?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think when the pandemic started, nobody knew exactly how this virus was being transmitted. If we had known, we probably would have focused on indoor air quality a little sooner, even than we did. Although I think we got a pretty good start pretty quickly. We worked with the Building Owners and Managers Association. We worked with AHRI, which is the building engineers, to come up with some sort of guidelines on, we started off with schools and then we went to commercial buildings, but there's also residential applications, obviously, too. Residential is probably not as complicated, if you will. There are only so many things you can do in a home to increase, indoor air quality. But a couple of them are very prominent, and some we'll get into a little bit later about some of the things that homeowners can do. But the pandemic really brought it into the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the primary sources of indoor air pollution? And then how do these pollutants affect people's health and productivity in homes and offices?
It's a good question, Michelle. It's off gases from, say, you get a new carpet, for example, or maybe new furniture, like if you have upholstered furniture, that sort of thing. If you have a fireplace, if obviously germs, viruses, really like, dust mites and that sort of thing. And, so those are some of the major pollutants that you can find in your home. And we'll talk a little bit about how you might be able to reduce those.
And I even think when you talked about, new furniture and upholstery, even when you order, and I do a lot of shopping online, so you order a lot of things, and sometimes they'll tell you they need to be aired out, or that you need to air it out because you can definitely smell there is something going on and there's some type of chemical or something that they've used. So really interesting and looking forward to where we go from here. So let's talk about some solutions here. Can you explain the role of HVAC systems because they play such a crucial role in maintaining good IAQ? What are some key considerations for selecting and then maybe more importantly, maintaining these systems in both residential and commercial spaces?
Sure. Well, selecting is really just a matter of, you know, buying quality equipment, and all of it is quality that our members manufacture. I mean, you're talking about iconic brand names that everyone would recognize. Having it installed by certified technicians. We actually, sort of as an aside, have an organization that we created called North American Technician Excellence, which certifies technicians, and they get certified in different aspects of HVAC for air conditioning, heating, heat pumps, and that sort of thing. So having your system installed correctly is probably the biggest thing you can do to help ensure indoor air quality. You also want to make sure that there's the proper filtration of the air. Um, and we'll get to filtration in a little bit. You also want to make sure that you have appropriate ventilation, and that typically is also done through your contractor who installs your system. They do a test where they can tell how much outdoor air you're bringing in, because you do want to have some outdoor air that mixes with the air in your house, and it all gets circulated around and it goes through filters, and that's really how you end up keeping the air in your home as clean as possible.
And in addition, we hear a lot of talk about energy efficiency because it's important. We're all trying to do what we can for the environment. So let's talk about that. How can homes and businesses balance the need for energy efficient systems with the goal, of course, of optimizing indoor air quality?
It's actually a very good question. It's not something that people normally ask either. There is a there's a certain trade-off here. When you bring in more outdoor air, which you do want to do, particularly in schools and commercial buildings, the more outdoor air you can successfully bring in to mix with the air inside, and change out the air according to a schedule, say every half hour or an hour or whatever. Anytime you bring in outdoor air, it's almost always going to be a different temperature than the air that's inside. So if you're, bringing in cold air in the winter, your system is going to work a little bit harder because it has to heat that air that comes in order to maintain your appropriate temperature inside. And the same in reverse is true in the summer. So, you are going to sacrifice a little bit of it's not you're not going to sacrifice efficiency. The efficiency is the same, but you are going to sacrifice costs. I mean, it's gonna use more energy, and then it's going to cost a little more. But I mean, you have to look at it as a trade-off. As I said, I mean, yes, it may cost you a little bit more. It may cost a school a little more. It may cost a building a little more. Um, but what you get for that is a healthier occupancy.
And such an important point that you made, because I think a lot of us forget when it comes to investing a little bit more, we get a little kind of sticker shock there. But as you said, if we are investing in an environment that will make us healthier overall, that will eventually save us money in the long run. So,
Sure.
what are some practical low cost strategies that homeowners and businesses can implement to enhance their indoor air quality without significant investments?
Honestly, the most important thing people can do, and it is so relatively inexpensive, is making sure they change their filters. And it's so easy to forget to do that. Most filters have, say a month life or a 3 month life. If it's a filter on your actual system, it's probably a good 6 months life. Sometimes it's a year. So you want to change your filters, and that's not only because of air quality, but it's also because if your filter is clogged, your system has to work that much harder to get the air through that filter. And I've actually seen situations where homeowners have had to replace their entire air conditioning system because they didn't change the filter. And it
Wow.
seems extreme, but what happens is the cold air that's coming through that air handler and trying to get into the rest of the house can't do it. And so the air turns around and goes back into the system, and it actually freezes things up. It's astonishing that, something that costs, I don't know, $20 or whatever, could end up costing you the price of an entire system. That doesn't happen very often, but that's very important. Another hugely important thing is for people to have a service agreement with their contractor, whether it's the contractor that installed their system or whether it's another one that they want to use. Having someone come in every 6 months, you got to check your air conditioner, and then you're going to check your furnace or your heat pump, whatever it is hugely important, because they're going to catch things that could end up costing you a bunch of money and frankly adversely affecting your health.
So, two questions that are spinning around here based on what you just said. First of all, the filter, as you said, it is very easy to do. It's very inexpensive to have that changed out. But how often do we need to be doing that? And do you have any advice for maybe, those reminders we know to change our batteries and our smoke detectors, anything that you can kind of pass on there to help us out?
One of the easiest things to do is to write with a Sharpie on your filter when you need to change it. So that way, if you think, oh gosh, I should check those filters, and then you look at it and you say, oh, it's supposed to be changed next week or whatever. Because each filter has on it how much life is in it. So it will say this is a 30-day filter or 60-day filter or whatever. So that's key. And also, you just say, hey Siri, set a timer for, whatever, tell me to change my filter next March 16th, and she'll do that. And now she's probably going to do it.
Yeah.
So that those two things are very key. And there was another thing that I was going to tell you, and now I can't remember what it was, but I'll probably think of it as you're asking me. And sort of the next question.
Yeah, and we really have no excuses, you said, because if we don't have the watch, we have the phone, and it's so easy to just put a reminder right in there. So great advice there. So you mentioned contractor and how important it is for the contractor to be looking around, because they're going to pick up things obviously that you will not, because you're not the professional. So can you give us some tips on what we should be looking out for when it comes to choosing the right contractor?
Yeah, absolutely. We love to talk about that because it is so important. And I mentioned Nate earlier. And if you go on Nate's website, NateX, and NATEX.org, you can just plug in your zip code and it will pull up a list of contractors that have a certain number of Nate certified technicians. And that's really where you want to start. Quality installation is so, and maintenance too, but quality installation is so important. I mean, if you buy a new, say, air conditioning system and it's improperly installed, you can lose 40% of your energy efficiency, and you wouldn't even really know it either, which is even sort of the scarier part. But if you have it installed by a reputable contractor, and then you have a service agreement so that they come out, not only, as we mentioned, do they catch things that you wouldn't catch as a homeowner, but the other thing is, if your system does sort of fail on you, it's always going to do it in the hottest part of summer or the coldest part of winter. And that's when everybody else's is going to fail too. And if you have a service agreement and you called them, you're going to be high on the list. You're not going to have to wait behind all the other people who have service agreements. So it's really very important. It seems like it's one of those things, it seems like a lot of money. Oh, it's $140, $160. And yeah, nobody wants to have to shell it out, but you're going to be happy you did when the time comes.
Yeah, 100%. As you said, maintaining and being on top of things is definitely going to be more cost effective in the end. And then when you said it's always the worst of the summer, the hottest time and the coldest time, and sometimes we forget until something does break. And unfortunately, it's the coldest or the hottest time. So important to just keep that maintenance up. Any final thoughts as we're closing out things here?
Well, you did mention some of the easy things that homeowners can do, and this tip sort of doesn't necessarily improve air quality, but it certainly can improve comfort, and that is just buying a programmable thermostat. You don't have to think about it. Like, I have a programmable thermostat that my contractor put in when he installed my system, and it switches from summer to winter, and I really never have to think about it, and it's really nice. And then another thing that they did that can improve indoor air quality is humidity control. We did put in a whole house humidifier, which just generally makes it more comfortable. We have sort of dry winters down here. We have very humid summers, but we have dry winters here in Virginia. And it really helps, to sort of even out the humidity level. And you also have the added benefit of not shocking each other when you touch them, which is nice. And frankly, humid air feels warmer too. So you could even say that could save you energy because you're feeling a little bit warmer when the temperature is actually cooler.
Some great tips there. Any additional resources? Because I know people are listening to this and they're probably taking notes and they might have some more questions. Can you point them in a direction to maybe give them some more answers?
Sure. So yeah, if you go to ahrinet.org, that is AHRI's website, you will find a whole host of information for homeowners. Also, I just want to reiterate the nadex.org for finding a contractor. That's just, it's really invaluable to have a contractor that's reputable and that you can trust.
Francis J. Dietz, Vice President, Public Affairs, Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. I would say that the information you give us here has been invaluable. It is invaluable. So thank you for your time here. Appreciate it. And I know you've answered a lot of questions, and I'm looking into things. I want to get a humidifier for the whole house. So you've sparked some conversations I'm going to have in my own household here. So I appreciate your time and good advice. So thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Michelle.
And I want to thank all of you for listening and tuning in to Air Intelligence. It is a podcast brought to you by Field Controls, talking about indoor air quality. And if you would like to find more information about Field Controls, you can visit fieldcontrols.com. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to connect with you on another podcast soon.